In the quietness of the early morning, when the mist hugs the earth and silence stretches across the mountains, a practitioner rises. He knows legs are not just limbs, they are the pillars of the body. Without strong legs, the path becomes fragile. Today I must tell you something you won't hear often. It may be difficult to accept, but understand this: not everything sweet nourishes you. There are 7 fruits, yes, fruits often praised for their health benefits, that if consumed without awareness weaken the very foundation of your strength, your legs. You see, in our training, strength doesn't come from the arms alone. Power, endurance, and balance, they begin in the legs. Yet what you put in your mouth, when done carelessly, poisons your progress. These fruits are not evil, but they carry traits that rob you silently, of minerals, of recovery, of circulation, of joint mobility. And above all, they rob you of connection to the earth. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. You may ask which fruits. That's the wrong question. Ask instead, what am I eating without attention? What sugar am I justifying as natural? What habits have I made sacred without reflection? Fruits high in fructose, lacking balance, causing inflammation, disturbing electrolyte balance, and driving insulin spikes. These are the real enemies of strength. Think of the body like bamboo. It bends but does not break. But if the root is dry, if the nourishment is wrong, it snaps. So ask yourself, am I choosing foods for short-term pleasure or long-term power? Do I eat because of tradition, trend, or truth? Is this fruit medicine or addiction dressed in health's clothing? In our tradition, strength is not only about lifting weight, but holding stillness. And no one can be still if their foundation is weak. Stop eating the 7 fruits not because they are cursed, but because you deserve a body that serves your spirit. Return to simplicity, return to awareness, and you will find your legs become unshakable, because only when the roots are strong can the tree grow tall. End speech. When people speak of strength, their minds often rush toward the visible biceps, chest, the curve of the back. What they miss, almost always, is the truth that all enduring strength begins beneath them, in the legs. The arms may lift, the chest may expand, but without rooted legs, all movement becomes fragile, disconnected, and unsustainable. In every martial art, in every grounded practice, it is the stance, not the strike, that determines the outcome. It is the unseen force below that gives rise to power above. The legs are not just tools of movement. They are the foundation of stillness. In every seated meditation, standing form, or walking breath, the legs carry the responsibility of anchoring the body to the earth. Without strong legs, the spine collapses, balance wavers, and breath cannot descend fully into the belly. Yet people weaken their legs daily not through lack of squats or sprints, but by what they place on their plate, and more specifically, what they believe is harmless simply because it is called fruit. You see, certain fruits have characteristics that directly affect the legs in ways people do not realize. When consumed excessively or mindlessly, these fruits disturb internal harmony. They may cause blood sugar spikes, which impair circulation in the lower limbs. Others may be high in natural sugars, but low in minerals, draining the body's reserves rather than replenishing them. Over time, this leads to heaviness in the legs, tightness in the calves, inflammation in the joints, and the feeling of being tired after only small exertions. The irony is deep. A person may believe they are nurturing their health by filling their diet with fruits, but inside their body is crying for balance. They are unknowingly placing a heavy burden on their kidneys, pancreas, and liver, all organs closely linked to the condition of the legs in traditional internal systems. The strength of the legs is not just muscle, it is also nerve function, circulation, bone density, fluid balance. And each of these elements can be subtly compromised by food that is too light, in its nature too cooling or too damp, forming for the body's true needs. In our understanding, the legs are where the jing, the essential essence, resides and is stored. They carry our weight not just physically, but energetically. When the legs are weak, a person is easily disturbed, lacks discipline, becomes impatient. This is not merely metaphorical. Weak legs mean weak grounding. Weak grounding means poor focus, unstable emotions, and scattered intention. And so, the food that weakens the legs also weakens the mind. There are fruits today, mass-produced and bred for sweetness, that did not exist in this form decades ago. Their sugar content is unnaturally high, their fiber lower, their energetic imprint altered. Eating these fruits daily is no longer like picking a single wild fig from a tree in the forest. It is more like drinking a sweetened syrup with a health halo. When such fruits are consumed without context or restraint, they slowly erode the body's ability to regulate energy from the ground up. It is also worth remembering that the legs are the furthest point from the heart. That means they are the last to receive nutrients and the first to suffer from poor circulation. When blood sugar levels rise and fall sharply, something triggered by excessive fructose from certain fruits, the small vessels that feed the legs can become damaged over time. This leads to numbness, cramps, even loss of mobility. In traditional understanding, this is not just physical damage, it is energetic stagnation, a blockage in the river of life that must flow smoothly from root to crown. In essence, what weakens the legs is not just poor exercise or age. It is also nourishment without wisdom. Many people eat for taste or for what they were told is good, never pausing to ask, how does this food make my body feel 2 hours later, the next day, over the years? The legs do not lie. If they feel heavy, tight, unstable, it is not only the muscles that are talking, it is the body's way of reminding you. Strength is built not only in training, but in choosing what you consume with clarity and discipline. There is a silent agreement in the modern world that fruit is good always. It is the universal symbol of health, displayed in every wellness commercial, every diet book, every colorful plate intended to represent a balanced life. Yet just because something grows from the earth does not mean it is always aligned with your body. A sword is made of metal, but not all metal is safe to hold. In the same way, not all fruits nourish. Some exhaust. When we look at fruit through the lens of harmony, we begin to see beyond the surface. Each food carries an energy, a tendency. Some fruits cool the body, others dampen it. Some spike internal movement, others stagnate digestion. Most people never think of food in this way. They see only the surface, calories, vitamins, fiber, but underneath that surface is an interaction between body and nature. And when the body is already unbalanced, consuming the wrong kind of fruit is not neutral, it is disruptive. Fruits high in fructose, especially those consumed in excess or without balance, have a particularly deceptive nature. Their sweetness brings pleasure quickly, but that sweetness has a price. Fructose, unlike glucose, is processed almost entirely in the liver. When the liver is burdened, the rest of the system pays the cost, especially the muscles, the joints, the connective tissues. A fruit may look innocent, but if it constantly taxes your system, it can lead to inflammation that creeps silently through the legs and spine. The idea that something natural must be beneficial is flawed. Poisonous mushrooms are natural, so is mold. So is venom. What matters is not whether something is natural, but whether it is compatible with your condition, your constitution, and your current level of activity and stress. Modern fruits are often bred to be sweeter, larger, and more visually appealing than their ancestral forms. These changes have shifted their nutritional and energetic properties, making some of them closer to candy than nourishment. What further complicates the matter is how fruits are often consumed today, in smoothies, in dried forms, in juices, or in large quantities without the fiber and water content that nature originally wrapped them in. A fruit that might be harmless in a small seasonal amount becomes a source of imbalance when consumed every day, every week, all year round. In traditional systems, fruits were eaten based on the season, the climate, and the needs of the body, not based on a universal rule that more fruit equals more health. Inflammation, which often originates in the gut, tends to settle in the extremities. The knees swell, the ankles stiffen, the feet ache. It is rarely noticed in the beginning, but over time the pattern becomes clear. Certain fruits, especially when consumed excessively or out of sync with one's body, contribute to this subtle fire. Within the body, you may not notice it the first week, but over time it wears away at your structure. It is not an explosion, but a drip, a slow erosion of strength. Furthermore, many people ignore the effect that fruits have on insulin sensitivity and hormone regulation. Elevated insulin levels from high fructose fruits may lead to water retention, decreased muscle tone, and even reduced growth hormone levels, factors that contribute to the weakening of the lower body. What seems like innocent snacking day after day becomes a habit that steals energy from the legs, the hips, the spine. Again, not through violence, but through repetition. And so, it is necessary to let go of the romanticism of fruit, to look with clearer eyes, not with fear, not with paranoia, but with honesty. Just because a food has a beautiful story, or a sweet taste, or a glowing reputation does not make it right for you. And what is right for one person may not be right for another. That is the path of cultivation, to observe, to learn, and to choose not based on labels or legends, but on inner experience, bodily wisdom, and quiet reflection. The body is not a machine, it is a garden. It responds to what is planted within it, not immediately, but over time. A single act of consumption may pass unnoticed, but repeated acts become habit, and habit becomes condition. This is how the body speaks, in patterns, and few patterns are as quietly destructive as the regular intake of excessive natural sugars, especially when disguised as health. Sugar does not always arrive with a label. It often comes wearing the mask of natural. A ripe mango, a sweet banana, a handful of dates. These are praised, even glorified, as clean energy. But energy is only useful if it can be directed. When the body is oversugared, that energy becomes chaotic, unstable. It surges and crashes. And what crashes most often, first and foremost, is the foundation, the legs. Recovery is the art of returning to strength after exertion. It is not simply rest, it is repair. Muscles tear slightly during movement, and they rebuild in stillness, but this repair process is delicate. It relies on the balance of blood sugar, inflammation, and hormones like insulin and cortisol. Excessive natural sugars, even when consumed in the name of health, can disturb this balance. They prolong inflammation, dull insulin sensitivity, and prevent the full regeneration of muscle fibers, especially in large muscle groups like the thighs and calves. Inflammation is not evil, it is part of the body's healing response. But when the signal to heal never stops, when the inflammation becomes chronic, the body can no longer distinguish between repair and overreaction. The joints begin to feel stiff, the tissues swell subtly, the knees ache in the morning. This is not age, it is accumulation. Sugar, when it overflows, does not comfort the body. It irritates it, especially in the lower limbs where circulation is slower and inflammation settles longer. Joint health is not just about cartilage or bone. It is about the environment around the joints, the synovial fluid, the ligaments, the tendons. These soft tissues are sensitive to sugar's indirect effects. Excess fructose can cause advanced glycation and products aged molecules that stiffen and degrade connective tissue over time. The result is a gradual loss of flexibility, mobility, and strength in the legs. You cannot squat deeply if the tendons are dry. You cannot jump freely if the knees are inflamed. What's important to understand is that sugar, even from fruit, does not act alone. It creates a ripple effect. It affects the gut microbiome, where the balance of helpful and harmful bacteria determine inflammation throughout the body. It affects the adrenal glands, which regulate energy and stress, and most importantly, it affects hydration. Sugar pulls water into the digestive tract and out of the cells. Legs that are dehydrated on the cellular level will always feel heavy, sluggish, and unstable, even when they look strong from the outside. There is also the nervous system to consider. The legs are deeply innervated, relying on smooth communication between the brain and muscle. Excess sugar damages nerves, especially over time. This is why people with blood sugar disorders often experience tingling, numbness, or loss of sensation in their feet. The signals begin to fade, movement becomes less precise, and when precision is lost, so is power. A strong leg is not just about muscle, it is about communication, balance, and clarity. The challenge is not in avoiding fruit entirely, but in recognizing which fruits push the body toward disorder. Natural sugars are not exempt from discipline. Sweetness is still sweet, no matter how organic or unprocessed. The path of strength is not only walked with the legs, it is walked with choices. Each bite carries weight, not the weight of guilt, but the weight of consequence. If the legs are to carry us forward with grace and power, they must be protected, not just through training, but through mindful nourishment. In the path of internal cultivation, there is a constant reminder: not all that is popular is wise, and not all that is ancient is outdated. The modern world offers countless voices, each with advice on what to eat, when to eat, how to eat. But when these voices grow louder than the voice within, one begins to live by trend rather than by truth. And nowhere is this more evident than in the way we choose food, especially food labeled as healthy. There is a danger in outsourcing awareness. A fruit marked as superfood suddenly becomes a daily ritual. A product with the word natural gains automatic trust. But labels are not wisdom. They are words often designed for persuasion, not clarity. To rely on them without question is like entering battle blindfolded because someone told you the sword in your hand is sharp. It is not the label that determines benefit. It is the relationship between that food and your body in this moment. Awareness begins in the moment before the bite. It asks not what this food is called, but what it does. What texture does it bring to the mouth? What sensation does it leave in the body? What breath follows after its digestion? This type of eating is not taught in magazines or influencers' posts. It is cultivated through silence, observation, and honest curiosity. It is asking, does this energize me or sedate me? Does it lighten my legs or make them feel heavy? To eat without awareness is to allow impulse, memory, and marketing to choose for you. These forces rarely consider the subtleties of digestion, the impact on joint fluid, or the subtle fatigue that builds in the limbs over time. One may follow a fruit-rich diet recommended by a fitness icon, not realizing that their own constitution is vastly different. In the monastery, two students never received the same tea. What works for one may harm the other. Personal truth is never one size fits all. Even within one's own body, truth shifts. What nourishes you in winter may disturb you in summer. What supports you in youth may burden you with age. Awareness is not static. It evolves with the body. If you eat simply because this is what I've always eaten, or this is what I was told, then you are no longer listening. You are repeating, and repetition without awareness is the root of imbalance. Food trends often appeal to the mind, not the body. They speak of antioxidants, macros, and miracle compounds, but the body does not speak in studies, it speaks in feeling. In the pulse of the legs after a meal, in the clarity or dullness of thought an hour later, in the quiet ache of the joints the next morning. These are not side effects, they are messages. The wise practitioner listens, adjusts, and evolves. Awareness is also humility. It is accepting that what once served you may no longer do so. A fruit you once loved may now cause bloating, fatigue, or heat. The ego resists change, it clings to preference, but the body is honest, it does not negotiate. To honor the body is to release attachment, even to foods we believe to be good, even to identities we've built around diet. There is no shame in letting go, there is only strength in listening deeper. Labels, fads, and food rules will come and go, but the body remains, your oldest teacher. To follow it, to truly follow it, requires more courage than blindly adhering to trend. It requires presence at every meal and discipline in every choice. It is not about perfection, it is about attention. And in attention we find the first gate to inner strength, clarity. In the practice of internal cultivation, we observe not only what enters the body, but also what it leaves behind. Some foods bring clarity, others bring weight. Some restore the flow of energy, others block it. And among the more subtle imbalances a person can experience is that of dampness, a hidden heaviness that is not always seen, but always felt. Certain fruits, by their nature, are damp, forming. When consumed excessively or carelessly, they deposit this weight into the lower body, where it settles like fog at the bottom of a mountain. Dampness is not a modern medical term. It is an ancient understanding of how the body loses clarity and becomes burdened by excess moisture, stagnation, and internal resistance. When dampness accumulates, the legs grow tired, the knees feel thick, and walking loses its ease. It is not always visible in scans or blood tests, but it is unmistakable to the one who feels it. A person may sleep well, eat healthy, and still carry this inner weight that makes the body feel slow, bloated, or swollen, especially from the waist down. Not all fruits create dampness, but some, especially those with high water content, cooling properties, or an overly sweet taste, do so when consumed in excess or out of season. Watermelon, for instance, may seem refreshing, but it can flood the digestive fire when eaten too often or in cold environments. Bananas are soft and grounding, but they are also dense and sticky, especially for those with slower digestion. Pineapple and mango, too, though vibrant and sweet, can disturb the inner balance if the system is already sluggish or weakened. This dampness tends to settle in the lower limbs for a reason. Gravity pulls excess fluids downward. Circulation in the legs is slower than in the upper body, and the legs being farthest from the heart are most sensitive to energetic imbalances that accumulate over time. The result is a subtle but persistent feeling of fatigue in the thighs, tightness in the calves, puffiness in the ankles. In time, this can evolve into joint stiffness, water retention, or even patterns of stagnation that affect movement and stability. Energetically, the legs are our roots. They connect us to the earth. But when those roots are soaked, swollen, or obstructed, the tree above cannot stand strong. A martial artist cannot move with precision if his base is flooded. A meditator cannot sit in stillness if her legs are heavy. Dampness is not only a physical burden, it is an energetic one. It clouds intention, slows reaction, and reduces the sharpness of internal awareness. It makes the entire being feel muted and unresponsive. Damp-forming fruits often affect those with a certain constitution more deeply, those who live in humid climates, those who eat too late at night, those who already struggle with digestion or water metabolism, but most people do not know their constitution. They follow taste and habit, not observation. A fruit that is harmless in one situation becomes harmful in another. That is the nature of imbalance. It is contextual. No food is universally bad, but any food taken without awareness can become a source of inner disorder. The path of strength is not just about what strengthens. It is about what weakens. It is about identifying the subtle thieves that rob you, not with violence, but with softness and repetition. Fruits that create dampness rarely feel aggressive. They taste good, they comfort. But this is how imbalance enters, not through resistance, but through seduction. One bite at a time, one meal after another, until the body no longer feels light when it rises in the morning. To recognize this is not to live in fear, but to live in clarity. To observe the body carefully, the way the legs feel after a meal, the way your joints respond after days of certain fruits, the way your breath travels downward or gets stuck. Dampness is not defeated by willpower. It is dissolved by attention, by warming the system, by choosing foods that lift rather than sink. And in the process, you remember the purpose of food is not to sedate, but to support your path. Strength is often misunderstood. It is imagined as mass, as muscle, as size, but real strength, the kind that sustains movement, endurance, and awareness, does not come from heaviness. It comes from lightness, not the lightness of being fragile or weak, but the lightness of freedom, of a body that can respond quickly, move without hesitation, and shift its weight like wind through trees. And it is this kind of strength that is most affected by what we eat, especially when the food carries hidden heaviness within it. Certain fruits, though praised for their nutrients, can subtly disturb this balance. They do not weaken the body in the way processed junk food might, but their impact is more refined, more difficult to detect unless you are paying close attention. These fruits burden the legs not through poison, but through stagnation. They interrupt the smooth flow of internal energy, making the limbs feel sluggish and unresponsive. Over time, you might say, I'm eating healthy, but I don't feel light. That is a clue. The feeling of stagnation in the body is not always dramatic. It may appear as a sense of resistance when climbing stairs, a dull ache when rising from sitting, a lack of spring in the step. The legs no longer wake up with the day they drag, and the cause is not always age or workload. It can be food, especially food that, although deemed healthy, does not align with your inner condition. Certain fruits, dense, heavy, overly cooling, or mucus-forming, create a traffic jam within the subtle pathways of the lower body. True lightness is not emptiness. It is spaciousness within strength. It is the feeling of power without resistance, the ability to move with presence without needing to push through internal weight. When the digestive system is free, when the joints are clear, when the circulation flows uninterrupted, the body moves as one unit. But if your daily intake includes fruits that cause bloating, retention, or damp accumulation, that unity begins to break. The legs no longer respond with immediacy. They hesitate. Not all stagnation is physical. the body and mind are connected. A leg that feels heavy often mirrors a mind that feels stuck. When digestion slows, thinking slows. When fluid builds up in the lower limbs, emotional heaviness is not far behind. Certain fruits, especially those high in sugars, or that have been taken out of their natural season, can act like anchors in the body. Instead of energizing you, they hold you down. You may feel full, but not alive. This is why the appearance of health is not enough. A food may be raw, organic, packed with vitamins, and still be wrong for your system. The image of a healthy fruit bowl does not guarantee vitality. It is the internal effect that matters. Do your legs feel more free after you eat? Do you feel taller when you stand? Do your knees bend with ease? These are the signs. Strength, real strength, reveals itself in ease, not effort. Subtle stagnation is often ignored because it doesn't scream, it whispers, and the modern world has trained us to listen only to loud signals: pain, illness, fatigue. But internal practitioners know, by the time the symptoms are loud, imbalance has already taken root. To feel heaviness in the legs, to feel less grounded in stance or slower in walking, is not just about aging. It can be about accumulation, especially from foods that pretend to be helpful. In order to walk the path of cultivation, we must constantly ask, does this support my lightness? Does this help me move, leap, kneel, and recover without burden? Fruits that compromise this, no matter how pretty or trendy, must be questioned. Not from fear, but from care. Not because we reject them entirely, but because we choose something more important. Strength without stagnation. Power without pressure, movement without mud. The body and the mind are not separate. They breathe together, stand together, fall together. And nowhere is this connection more apparent than in the legs. The legs carry not only your physical body, they also carry your will. When the legs grow heavy, when they move with resistance instead of flow, it is not only the body that suffers. The discipline, the posture, the inner resolve, all begin to erode. The roots of practice become unstable. Discipline is not held in the mind alone. It is stored in the body, in the spine that stays upright under pressure, in the knees that do not tremble under strain, in the thighs that support stillness and movement alike. But when the legs are burdened by stagnation, poor circulation, or the silent weight of improper food, they no longer serve as reliable pillars. The upright structure begins to lean. What once stood tall begins to collapse in on itself. A collapsing posture is more than a physical detail. It is a signal. The body slouches not just from fatigue, but from defeat. The chest sinks, the breath shortens. The gaze drops, and with that drop, attention fades. This is how the outer form mirrors the inner state. It does not happen suddenly. It creeps in, day by day, step by step, until one day, standing still feels harder than walking. Remaining centered feels like a chore, and the body begins to betray the mind. This betrayal is not intentional. It is the result of neglect, of overlooking how certain habits, including what we consume, quietly strip us of vitality. Many fruits that are taken for energy end up dulling the legs, creating a fog within the limbs. The muscles no longer respond with the same sharpness. Joints no longer open with the same readiness. And when the body resists movement, the mind begins to negotiate with laziness. The warrior's focus gives way to the civilian's comfort. Your will is shaped by the effort it takes to rise in the morning. If your legs feel like stone when you leave your bed, your mind will look for excuses. But if the legs rise with ease, with lightness, then the will flows upward like fire through dry grass. The two cannot be separated. One supports the other. When your legs move with freedom, your spirit moves with purpose. But when they feel sluggish, Everything else must push harder to compensate. It is in the silence of standing, in the stillness of holding your form, that the true weight of the legs reveals itself. If the legs are heavy from within because of what you've fed them, because of what you've ignored, they will not endure. The trembling will come quickly. The shift from rootedness to instability will be subtle but sure. And this is not a failure of strength. It is a failure of nourishment. It is a failure of awareness. When the legs are strong and light, they become channels. Energy flows downward and upward. There is bounce, there is rhythm, there is grace. But when they are blocked by swelling, dampness, sugar, or stagnation, then they become burdens. You begin to carry your own limbs as if they do not belong to you. Movement loses its spontaneity, and in this state no discipline, no matter how committed, can be sustained with joy. Discipline is not about pushing through pain endlessly. It is about preparing the body so pain is not your teacher every day. If what you eat makes your legs betray your breath, if the fruits you consume under the guise of health secretly drown your power in heaviness, then your practice will falter. And faltering is not weakness. It is the body asking you to listen more deeply. The path of refinement is not only about what is obviously harmful, it is also about questioning what appears harmless. The deepest forms of imbalance do not arrive with loud announcements. They slip in quietly, disguised as comfort, tradition, or even health. A piece of fruit may look clean, taste sweet, and be offered with the purest intention, yet still carry the potential to disrupt your inner rhythm. The practitioner learns to ask, not is this good, but is this good for me right now? In the monastery, we were taught to observe how food affects not just the tongue, but the breath. To eat something and then stand still, to breathe, to walk, to sit, and to notice. If after eating the breath becomes shallow, the knees feel thick, or the step loses precision, then that food, no matter how natural or innocent it appears, is interfering with the flow. This is a form of disturbance that most overlook because they are listening to ideas, not to experience. A banana may calm the stomach, but leave a fog in the legs. A mango may lift the mood, but tighten the lower back. These fruits are not evil. They simply do not serve every body in every season. And if their effect is to limit your balance, to weigh down your hips, to dampen your speed, then they must be questioned. Not rejected with anger, but met with clarity. The fruit is not the enemy, but ignorance of its effect is. Balance is a sensitive system. It is not held only by muscles and joints. It is maintained by energy that flows freely from foot to crown. If a food clouds that energy, your posture suffers. You shift more weight to one side. Your hips wobble. Your stance loses its stillness, and this is not only about martial training, it is about presence. A body that cannot balance cannot remain fully aware. And the roots of that imbalance often begin in the kitchen. Movement is another teacher. After eating something, ask, can I move the same way? Can I squat, rise, leap, or rotate without resistance? Or has something changed? The one who cultivates clarity does not ignore such questions. They use them. The meal becomes a mirror. The breath becomes a journal. And over time, the body reveals a map of its truth, one that is far more accurate than any diet book or label. Breath is the final test. After food, sit quietly and feel your breath. Has it shortened? Has it cooled? Has it drifted higher into the chest instead of remaining deep in the belly? Some fruits, though light in appearance, draw the breath upward and away from the center. This is not a small thing. Breath is the root of will, of focus, of life itself. When the breath cannot descend freely, the mind becomes scattered, and the body begins to lose its internal coordination. Even the most harmless food, taken repeatedly without discernment, becomes an obstacle to refinement. And the greater your sensitivity, the more clearly you will feel it. The modern world calls this being picky, but in the world of inner cultivation, this is called discernment. It is not about being afraid to eat. It is about being aware enough to know what food does, to recognize that anything, no matter how natural, must still be tested by your experience, not by assumption. This is the way of the path: gentle questioning, silent listening, daily testing, not through paranoia, but through presence. You are not asked to reject all fruit, or to live in fear. You are asked to observe how even the innocent can interfere, how even sweetness can become sedation, how even a small imbalance, when repeated, can cloud your strength. And in this observation, you reclaim what many have lost: the ability to choose with clarity from the inside out. So you must choose again and again, not based on taste, not based on trend, but based on truth, the truth of how your body responds, the truth of how your energy moves, the truth of how your legs feel when you rise to train, to walk, to live with presence. There is no universal food for strength, only food that aligns with your moment, your condition, your path. This path is not about restriction. It is about refinement. It is about learning to listen so carefully that even what appears harmless is questioned, not out of fear, but out of respect for your body, your breath, your journey. Not all poison comes in bitter form. Some comes sweet, soft, and familiar. You are not here to follow what is common. You are here to become uncommon, to move with clarity, to stand with power, to live with awareness so deep that even the smallest bite must answer to your intention. Let every step you take be light. Let every breath you draw be full. Let every choice you make be rooted in awareness, because your strength is not found in your muscles. Your strength is found in your attention. And when your attention is sharp, nothing enters your temple without purpose, not even a piece of fruit.